questions at the beginning, because as I know, like half of the room are people who are related to like one company and are doing DevOps. So who of you are front-end developers? Because I will mention one example scenario in which probably front-end developers are most probable to be in this scenario. So who of you are front-end developers? We have one guy, 2, 3, really 3 guys, and that's all. I had additional question, but I am afraid to ask it. Who of you 3 guys have no experience with building mobile apps? Never did any mobile app? Of you who are front-end developers? Have you ever built any mobile app? You did, you did, you did. So this presentation is for no one, I can go to home. But just joking, I hope everyone of you will get some insight from it. Starting with me, I am Robert. I am front-end developer. I do sometimes some blogging stuff, sometimes activity stuff. I love traveling to distant places, and like my favorite activity is going somewhere and listening to audiobook while walking for like 5 hours or something like that. So this is what you can talk with me about after hours. If you want slides from this presentation, you can scan this QR code or access this website at the corner.
Will be published like after the...
Yes. Under this QR code are slides to the post with summary from this presentation, all of the links from this presentation slides, and also recording should be on this website. I hope this is the answer for your question. At the end of the presentation, this QR code will be once again if you want to scan it. Right now, I want you to, like, this is the situation I mentioned. I want you to close your eyes if you want. If you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to. And oh my God, it was too fast. And I want you to imagine yourself in a situation in which, okay, assume also you are front-end developers, because it was the part of this story, but let's assume it. And it's Monday like this. This is our example scenario. It's Monday like this, but maybe it's morning instead of evening as we have right now. And someone approaches you, maybe it's your boss at your work, maybe it's your PM, maybe it's your client, writes to you some email, calls you or something, and tells you that there is mobile app to do. And you are people who are to do this mobile app. Every one of you is the person who has to do this mobile app. And maybe, like, if you did some mobile app, it's easy probably for you. If you haven't, maybe you are excited, maybe you want to learn something new, maybe you wanted to make one mobile app. It will be exciting maybe for you, but there is one problem, and it works, awesome. But there is one problem, or maybe 3. When you realize. The first problem is that you have 2 months to deliver this mobile app, which is very short deadline, as also looking at the fact that, you know, this is mobile app, we don't know the scope, of course, so we can assume that if it would be web application, it will be very hard to deliver one in such a deadline. The second problem is the fact that you never built any mobile app. This is the reason I asked these 2 questions at the beginning. And the third problem is that there is no one who can help you. And what do you do in such a situation? Short deadline, you have to build a mobile app. You have 4 options: 2 useless ones, 2 useful ones, assuming you have 2 months to build an app. The first useless option in this context are native apps. Every one of you probably recognize native apps. You build one app for iOS, you build one app for Android. You can build the best app you want in your life, the best app of your life, but there is no way to learn these two technologies in 2 months, so this is probably useless option for us in this situation. The second useless option, and maybe some of you thought that I will talk about them looking at the title of this presentation, are compiled mobile apps. React Native, Flutter, as I know in .NET it's also possible to build compiled mobile apps. And it's awesome approach, but the problem is, but maybe not the problem, it's awesome approach in general, because instead of 2 code bases, we have 1 code base. You know that we have also code that is very similar to front-end developers, very familiar to front-end developers. Especially in case of React Native, for example. But still, it will be very hard looking at this scope I mentioned and our deadline to deliver one mobile app, especially looking at the fact that we have to also review it at the end, we have to upload it to App Store, Play Store, assuming we want both platforms, and wait. Still very hard. But we have first useful option, and the first useful option are hybrid mobile apps. And here I can do something that wasn't planned, but because of the second man who will present after me, I got a book to give to someone of you, because he got a lot of gadgets and doesn't have anything to do with them. So I will, because these 2 books are for the end of my presentation, I will take 1 book and I want you to get that one right now. For the person who will answer me, what are hybrid mobile apps? Do you know that in general? Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure, but those are the applications that have some web view or like the bridge that connects to the native application.
Exactly. You are the first person, and it wasn't planned, so we can even choose which book you want.
The first one.
The first one. Okay. You never read it, that means. You should.
Just revise, you know.
Okay. So, exactly, hybrid mobile apps are apps in which we have a native application. We can have it for iOS, we can have it for Android, and inside of this native application, we have a web view, and inside of this web view, we run a web application, and this web application is connected using some API that technology, like in this case Capacitor, adds to our web application, and using this API, we use native functionality like notifications, like geolocalization and stuff like that. We have also 1 code base, because using technologies like Ionic, like Capacitor, we have 1 web project that then is run inside of the native application that is generated by Capacitor. We can have wherever, I can say popular, sorry there is no spelled for those of you who are fans of it, but it's in progress as I know, but we can have React syntax, we can have Angular, Vue, or even Vanilla.js if you want for some reason, in case of these technologies. And we have a lot of useful plugins when we look at these 2 technologies and components who are helping us with building mobile apps. Plugins are this, I can say, plugins are this piece of software that gives us this API for handling native functionality. Components I will mention in a minute. And in general, the result, I will explain more, is that we don't have too much to learn and even code on our own. We can even assemble a lot of parts of our app, and then we have our app. This is the reason it's first useful option. The second useful option, but probably not the option in general, in general, are PWAs. Why is it not an option in general? Like PWAs are awesome because you can have web application and you add some service worker to it, you add some manifest, you handle offline mode, and you have web application that can be added to home screen of the user's phone or run on the desktop or something like that. But it can't be. I hate the fact that on this remote control, the next button gives me previous slide. So I have to click on the previous every time. It can be downloaded from App Store and Google Play, and this is a problem in case of PWAs because a lot of people want to download apps from App Store, from Google Play, and have, like we can say, real app. And this is probably not something your PM boss or someone who approached you in this imagined situation wanted. So this is the reason it's not an option in general.
I have a question. Are people even used to PWAs? Like you have like this button on your website to download the app, but like not so much to do.
True. That's the main reason I think. Go ahead, maybe before me.
How about trusted web applications? TWA?
I don't know about them, to be honest. Like this is maybe.
We can discuss after.
True. Probably if you would tell me the definition, probably I know that under some other name or something, because we'll discuss that. Awesome, by the way, maybe I will learn something new. So in this context, I believe hybrid apps look like the best option for our needs, so we can go quickly through to these two technologies I mentioned, capacitor and ionic, and talk about how we can build one hybrid application. As I mentioned, we can make it with capacitor and ionic. And what's capacitor? It's this everything what hybrid mobile apps are about. That means it runs our web application inside of the native application and provides us these plugins which we can use and their JavaScript APIs in our web application to handle native stuff. It also provides us native code access if we need it for some reason. Probably not, but we can do native stuff inside of capacitor if we need. If we, for example, I know the example of my friend who was very angry at React Native because he wanted to make some custom keyboard and some custom like walking through the input field with this keyboard, and it was very hard because he needed native code to do it, and he needed to connect React Native to some native stuff, and in this example it's possible. There is a nice diagram on how capacitor works. I won't go through it, but you can look at this link. It's also in extras. This diagram is from this link. This article in general nicely explains capacitor more. And by the way, this link, how capacitor works, that is on the corner, it's also nice piece of text. It's a newsletter, as I remember, that explains it further, even as a concept, not for people who want to do something like that, but concept itself is a nice thing to know about. Ionic is a framework. It's a web framework. It provides you everything you want to need from a web framework, like styles, like theming, like starting templates, like routing, etc. This is this piece because capacitor works in with anything that works with JavaScript, with web JavaScript, I can say, not Node.js, for example. When it comes to Ionic, it works nicely with React, Angular, Vue. It supports it, and it's nice information when it comes to components that Ionic gives us, because they are already for React, for example. Go ahead.
Does it work well with React and Vue already? Because it was built like at the beginning for Angular, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
The support now is much better.
Yes,
like 3 years ago.
Yes, right now it's nice. It works nicely. Like in general, this presentation is from my experience. This imagined situation, I've been there. So, you know, I had to deliver mobile app without knowing how to do it very quickly, and I used these two technologies, and I used React with capacitor and Ionic, and had no problems beside of like situation in which for example, app broken in a native mode, in a simulator, for example, but didn't broke in a web mode, as opened as a web application, and there was no error in console, for example, and I had to debug it. Beside of it, I had no issues with, for example, connecting Ionic to React and putting it together. So it works well, I can say. So getting back, Ionic provides us a lot of components that are built both for iOS and Android and already styled for these two platforms. So for example, alerts, action sheets, you can see on these components that you have one version for Android and one version for iOS, and it looks different and it looks exactly how you would like it to look for probably on iOS and Android. Toggles and basically many others, and this is the reason I said that a lot of these components can just be used and put inside of our app, because it's, from my experience at least, it's common to use, especially on iOS, components and styles for components who look like the native ones, who look like, for example, iOS settings, and Ionic provides you exactly these components and you can plug them in your application and it works well. We know the Fury. I want you to know some practice when it comes to building these mobile apps. And when it comes to practice, we have three parts of building apps in general, or building even IT projects, very rough steps, like setting our everything we need, setting our environment, our app, our anything we build, development, of course, and deployment. And I want to talk about three of them. The first one is setting up our application, and right now I want to show you how our Ionic Plus capacitor can be set up. And here, of course, okay, awesome. Here it's what I needed. Like, to set up our app using these two technologies, we of course need Ionic CLI, which I already installed. By the way, I don't do it live. I show you what I've done before, because live coding is, you know, how it works. It always breaks. And in general, installing these dependencies are longer than my talking. My talking is too long still, but this is even longer. So I did it already. Then when we have our Ionic CLI, setting up our app is one job, one command, which is Ionic start, that brings us through the creation wizard, which, like, we can select framework we want to use, give a name to our project, and use a starter template that we have a couple of starter templates that are basic starter templates you can expect from a web framework that this web framework can give you, like some files, some maybe components that that can show you what can be done, very short, very small piece of what can be done using this technology. And then it installs a lot of dependencies, it sets up our project, it adds files, and that's it. And we have our project, and it looks like this. And I can zoom for you for it to be seen nicely. And our project, in case of React, I'm not sure what's in case of Vue or in case of Angular, but in case of React, hello, pizza. In case of React, it's based on Create React App template, on Create React App in general. It even, when you look at package.json, it even uses the same React scripts as Create React App does. You have the same file structure as Create React App. You have files like app, like setup tests that are known from Create React App, etc. And as I said, our app at the, I can say, baseline is a web application, so we can run it inside of the web, as you can see here, for example. This is our application, and I run it inside of Samsung Galaxy as a device that in this mobile mode inside of the browser is run. That's the reason it applies Android styles. When it comes to iOS, I will get back to it. Our app will look slightly different in case of iOS because it, as I said, applies to different types of styles. And I run one command. I run, of course, our app using like npm start, and that's it. And we have our app run on localhost. And then if we want to run our app, because this is how our app gets run as this web application part, when we want to run it as this native application part, which runs inside this web part, we can use two commands. First of all, we have to add a specific platform for, and this is something Capacitor like takes ownership on. We need to add our platform. I added already iOS, and by the way, this is the reason we have iOS folder here. There is no Android because I didn't add Android platform. And then we can build it. Building our platform, our app for specific platform, builds our native part and builds this part with this web view inside, and already connects this web view to our web application, so we don't need to do very much more. It builds our app, as you can see in the CLI. It also installs any plugins we would like to have for our capacitor. For example, we have plugin like Capacitor Haptics by default. These plugins are default, and we can add wherever we want. We have, for example, Haptics. This is plugin which handles force touch. You probably know that, for example, I'm iPhone user, so I call it Force Touch because it's called on iPhone Force Touch, but I don't know how it's called on Android. You know, this situation in which you click on something, you hold it, and you got vibration from your phone. This plugin handles it. You can just handle it click on some element, and you got vibration on your mobile phone. And going to the end, it opens our app inside of the native IDE. Native IDE for iOS is Xcode in this example, and you can see it opened already in Xcode. I ran it using this awesome button here. And this is our app, how it looks like on iOS. And it looks, as I mentioned, different. Here we have Android styles, here we have iOS styles, and this is pretty much it when it comes to setup, and then we can work with our app. Of course, I oversimplify it. Of course, it's not like there are probably situations in which you would like to do it slightly different. This is the most common way to set up our app. And this is it, what I wanted to show inside of the, bless you, inside of the code editor and console, etc. These are commands I've used for some recap. These are links, they are also in extras, as I remember. There's a lot of links on this presentation in general, and all of them are in extras. Articles on testing our app inside of the simulator, because as I mentioned, something different can be testing our app inside of the browser. For 99% of time in general, you can test this app in a website. This is also another reason it's faster to develop than React Native, for example. but 1% of the time you need this simulator, and if you want to debug something on simulator, these two links are helpful. And the rest is classic web application creation, really. Like this is so simple with a bit of help from these Ionic components I mentioned and 3 groups of capacitor plugins. We have official ones, we have community ones, and we have awesome Cordova plugins. So basically, if you don't have something in official ones, you go there. If you don't have something there, you go there. And probably you have everything you want to handle native stuff in these 3 groups. If you don't have it, you go to native code, but probably you don't have to. By the way, these plugins, this group of plugins is called Awesome Cordova plugins, because some of you that was weird. Do any of you heard about Apache Cordova? Some technology like this? Poor you. Capacitor is a technology which replaced Cordova, and it works much better, and these plugins were built in times in which Ionic was in place and it worked with Cordova. Then Ionic said, oh my god, it doesn't work well, and they built Capacitor from scratch, by the way, to not get biased by Cordova. And by the way, this is not only my opinion that I say poor you using or knowing Cordova. Cordova is, as I remember, for example, in Stack Overflow in this year, not this year, to 2022, in Stack Overflow survey for 2022, it was the most dreadful web framework in stats. So people in general don't like Cordova. Capacitor is better. And right now they are also Cordova plugins and they work with Capacitor. And then we do the deployment. Deployment is, it has, like, development had some to do with something what's specific to Ionic and Capacitor. Deployment does pretty much nothing, because deployments look like we build our app and then we upload it to App Store and then we upload it to Play Store, if we, of course, assuming we want to run it on both platforms, if we want to run it on one, you know. And this deploying, this uploading it to Play Store and the same with App Store, this is general uploading up to App Store and Play Store, and there is nothing to do with Capacitor or Ionic. You have to build your app and generate certificates, etc., as App Store and Play Store requires you to do. And then we have our app, hopefully on deadline. This presentation was, in general, this presentation is about the situation in which, if you know front-end in general and you have to build web application, learning for me as a person who knew front-end and had no idea how to build mobile application, learning these technologies I mentioned here, these 2 technologies, and in general using them, was like 1 day to learn, and that's it. And knowing only web applications, I was able to build functioning, simple but functioning mobile application. So in similar situation it can be useful. Couple of FYIs for you at the end. I wasn't able to fit them somewhere on the presentation, so I did it right now. You can easily add Capacitor to your existing web project. So, you know, if you have some project which is web application, and we can get back to our example situation in which someone approaches you, your boss or someone, and tells you there is mobile app to do, but doesn't tell you that there is a new mobile app to do, but we have this web application and we want to have a mobile app from it. You can just add Capacitor to your existing setup and it will run, and Capacitor will run simply your web application inside of the native one. You can build it then and have application, mobile application. The second FYI, which is very nice, and I did even article on it. It was published today, and there is a link for it. Because this is bigger topic, and in general, topic is like you can use micro frontends. This is the reason these books are here. To skip apps review on update in case of using Ionic and Capacitor, like in situation in which you do native applications or compiled applications, and you update it every time in case of App Store or some of the time in case of Play Store, for example, when there is a lot of changes. When you have your app uploaded already and you need to update it, it needs to get a review from App Store and Play Store. And this approach using micro frontends can let you to omit like 90% of these reviews or even more. And so you can check that link if you are interested. And that's the last FYI. You mentioned that no one is using PWAs, but if someone wants to use one and wants to have, for example, like mobile application for Android and iOS, for example, and adds to it web application that is also PWA, it's very easy in case of Ionic and Capacitor, because, for example, in case of React added with Ionic with React, I wanted to say framework, but I know React is not a framework. In case of Ionic with React added to it, this is like changing one line of code and you have PWA. So you can easily have it, and exactly, you have it. Extras once again, so if you want to easily get these slides or wherever, or links I mentioned, you can scan it. I see no one is scanning, so I can go further.
But we will send it later.
Awesome, thank you. Awesome, good to know. This is on my personal website, like Robert Orliński PL. This is first article right now, these extras. Now a small contest, so thank you very much for listening to my talk. This was my first time telling to like publicly, so if you want to give me any feedback, you can use this QR code and it will go straight to me. If not, you can also give me it in person, it will be also awesome. That's it, thank you very much one more time.